Well, someone with first-hand experience of this incredibly sensitive situation is journalist Yvonne Ridley. She was captured by the Taliban in 2001 and held for 11 days by the terror group. And she joins me right now. Good afternoon to you, Yvonne.
Afternoon,
Good
Julian.
afternoon. Good. I'd love to see you. I'm going to be very clear here. You know, you and I, we were colleagues on the Sunday Express when you were taken captive. A very harrowing experience for you and for your colleagues, friends and family. And we have remained good friends since, although, let's be honest, a lot of our political views differ an awful lot, as I think will emerge during this conversation. But I want to go back to those days when you were taken hostage. You were grabbed from the border where you'd been working as a journalist, trying to leave the border. You were taken by hostages. You were initially alone, and then you were taken to Kabul. And you were being held hostage as the US air assault began on the Afghanistan capital. And I can only imagine the terror that you would have felt then. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like and what the Israeli captives right now in Gaza will be going through?
Well, just watching events unfold this weekend actually propelled me right back into Afghanistan. The whole thing was very triggering. Seeing a woman being carted away on a motorbike and she's shouting for help, and there's just complete chaos around her. It reminded me of when I was taken and people were firing Kalashnikovs and shouting death to America and long live Osama bin Laden. And people were cheering, even though I was absolutely terrified. And it all came flooding back as though it had just happened yesterday. And it has made me think about how those hostages must be feeling right now. And they will be terrified. The uncertainty is something that is very hard to deal with. And I would imagine that wherever they are, they'll be kept quite separate, and they won't be able to hear the news or see the news, and just being completely shut off from the rest of the world, not knowing what's going to happen.
Is that scarier than having information? Because if the information, I'm thinking, is if the information is that so many people have died, you know, well over 1,000 people in Israel have died, men, women, children, babies, the reports claiming, yet verified, are babies being beheaded and things, and the claim that Hamas is going to execute a terrorist, execute a hostage live on television every time there is an attack on Gaza, that there isn't a warning for civilians to escape. That would be far too much for most people to cope with.
I think when I was finally released on humanitarian grounds, that when I spoke to you and other colleagues and my family, I realized that the ordeal had actually been far more painful in many ways for them. Because again, it's the uncertainty of not knowing if your loved one is being harmed, is being tortured, what sort of condition are they in, are they still alive? And of course, media speculation isn't helpful either. There were also stories emerging that I would be being tortured by this interrogation squad that had been sent to question me. And it's then that you realise, that although it's our profession, it's not really helpful to speculate.
Yeah.
And
I can remember getting a phone call early in the morning from a BBC journalist telling me, had I heard that Yvonne Ridley had been executed? I had not heard that. And that was, again, a very distressing bit of information, false information, thankfully, as it turned out at the time. When you were actually being held captive, you know, were you, of course, the Taliban, different from Hamas, of course. Were you tortured? You've written a book about your experiences. Tell us, you know, were you well treated? Did you develop relationships? Did you develop sort of friendships with your captives? It was only 11 days, 11 days too long. But were you just sort of huddled in a corner in chains, or were you able to try and communicate and try to develop some sort of personal relationships with people in the hope that that might help keep you alive?
I did try and engage with them. There was an obvious language barrier there straight away. It was very hard to communicate, but they did treat me well. And I was kept in different locations over a 10, 11-day period. And throughout my treatment, I was treated extremely well. Now, the Taliban do have a similar ideology to Hamas. And I just pray and hope that Hamas are observing the rules that they follow as set out by Islam, which is treating hostages and prisoners with care and respect.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not sure many people will have much hope given how Hamas terrorists have treated Israeli civilians, men, women and children. Now, talking of Gaza specifically, obviously your experience was in Afghanistan. You have been very much involved with publicising and trying to help the plight of people in Gaza, the Palestinians, and I think it's perfectly legitimate for people to be concerned about that. We don't have to, just be concerned about one group of people as opposed to others. You were involved in one of those peace protests, sort of convoys of boats to the Gaza coast, controlled by Israel, of course, back in 2008, to try and get vital supplies in. Tell us about your concerns when we know that the Israeli government is, not just bombarding the territory of Gaza, but also has cut off water, food, fuel supplies. It is thought that within a matter of a couple of days, those supplies will be finished. And it will be, as we know, the most vulnerable civilians who will be affected most. What do you make of all of that?
Well, as usual in any war, it's women and children who are propelled into the front lines, whether they want to be there or not. And this, it doesn't matter whether it's Iraq, Gaza, Afghanistan. This is the reality of war. But I've been to Gaza twice now, and it is described as the largest open-air prison in the world. And watching the scenes on our TV screens is horrific. I've called a few friends that I have in Gaza to see if they're okay. And we must remember as well that not everybody in Gaza is a member of Hamas.
Yeah.
And this is the difficulty that some people have, when the red mist descends and the rage over the events over the weekend happened. People forget that the people in Gaza, more than 2 million, they're human beings. More than 50% are children. From the figures coming in from Al-Shifa Hospital, one of the main hospitals, where there's a British doctor who's performing surgery round the clock, he's saying that about 40% of those that he's treating are children. And it just reminds me of Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who said, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. Okay. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, then the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality.
Can I clarify, though, just as we end, Yvonne Ridley, do you condemn what the Hamas terrorists did in Israel on Saturday?
I condemn all violence.
Do you condemn what the Hamas terrorists did in Israel on Saturday? It's a yes or a no.
Having experienced the sheer terror of being bombed and being confronted.
We talked about that. I have a lot of concerns about what's happened. We've agreed. We agreed. We both are concerned about the plight of civilians in Gaza, both from bombing and from lack of basic needs. Separate from that, leave that aside. We can agree on that. Do you condemn the terrorist massacre of innocent men, women and children in Israel on Saturday? Yes or no, Yvonne?
It's not a yes or a no. I condemn all violence. That should be your answer. But this decision...
Then if you condemn all violence, then you condemn that attack.
Channel 4 News went and
I don't care what Channel 4 News said, Yvonne. I'm asking you. If you condemn all violence, why is it so hard to say, yes, I condemn the massacre of men, women and children, civilians in Israel on Saturday by Hamas terrorists?
I've just said I condemn all violence. I condemn the war crimes that are being committed by Israel right now on the
we've discussed that. You're not going to say, yes, I condemn that.
I condemn the Hamas
you can't specifically condemn Hamas.
Sorry?
You can't specifically condemn Hamas.
I've just said it.
You haven't.
I've just said, as much as I condemn the Israeli action on Gaza, I also condemn the Hamas actions on Israel.
The massacre of innocent men, women and children, young people at a music festival, babies in their cots.
And
It's not actions. You're a journalist. You use words for a living, Yvonne. You're a highly articulate, knowledgeable and intelligent woman. They're not actions. Actions is me picking up a cup of tea.
When we see major news organisations pumping out propaganda and whipping up the hate, what is needed in the Middle East is peace. And
did massacring 1,200 people in Israel promote peace?
What I would say to the international community is, for God's sake, do something for the people of Gaza. You have ignored them for so long. You know, if you can't expect...
We're going to have to leave it there. Yvonne, I'm really disappointed in you. I'm really disappointed. I just don't think that's a hard thing to do or to say. But thank you, Yvonne Ridley. I appreciate you joining us. I really do.